So Stormlight 5. Let's talk non-spoiler about Stormlight 5 for a few minutes. Stormlight 5 is the end of the first arc of the Stormlight Archive, right? I've been saying that since the beginning, since book 1. But then I went and I ended, Mistborn, and people are expecting it to end like that. That's not what I mean by the end of the first arc. This is more like an anime arc than it is like the end of Mistborn 1. And I need to start preparing that for people, because one of the things I'm getting from beta readers is, number 1, it's going really well. People are really liking the book. Number 2, they're like, oh, I thought this would be an ending like end of Mistborn 3. No, it's more like the end, like I said, of an anime arc. This is, the end of Stormlight is book 10. You are going to get some decent resolutions on things I've been promising for a while, but you're not going to get resolutions on everything, because it's not the end yet. This has been a real challenge, right? When I work on the Stormlight books in particular, they are very difficult in the best of ways. Because I love epics. I love telling an epic. But the big challenge is making sure that your epic is engaging and not slow and boring, and that you're doing new things within a series, but it still feels like the series. And the way that I break this up in my head is by taking it little chunk by little chunk. So each Stormlight book I plot as if it were a trilogy, right? And then Stormlight, each of those chunks are plotted like a normal book with a Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So you've got almost 9 acts in a given Stormlight book. And then I plotted the first 5 to kind of be like, hey, let's get to the halfway point of the series and tie up some things and start to kind of propel us toward what the conflict for the next 5 are going to be. This is all a big balancing act. I'm really hoping it works, because Stormlight 5 is a very important book. I haven't been as worried for a book, I don't think, since I released the first Wheel of Time book, to see how people would respond to that. So don't worry, the beta readers are really liking it, but because of that, I've actually done way more beta reads on this book than I've ever done before. I will do a draft, get more people to read it, do a draft, get more people to read it. It is a lot of work, but I have now almost exactly 1 month remaining, 1 month and change, to turn in the final draft, which I worked on the flight here, because it's very tight. What we are going to read to you today, so you can find online readings I've done for Kaladin at the beginning of Stormlight 5. You can also find a few of the interludes. So what I have left that I haven't ever read is Shallan from the beginning of Stormlight 5, right? Now, this is the beginning, so it's going to involve some setup that you're not going to get payoff for until December. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read for the next 38 minutes, which will probably take us through, my guess will be 2 Shallan sections. At the start of the book. These are sandwiched between Kaladin sections that I've done readings from already, all right? And I think I'm going to go sit up here for this, and hopefully I can juggle this and my water bottle, and we're just going to do that. Let's see if I turn this sideways. Will it go? No. Dropbox. All right. Shallan lingered atop lasting integrity, the great fortress of the honor spren, thinking about all the people she'd been, the way she changed based on perspective. Indeed, life was largely about perspective. Like this strange structure, a hollow rectangular block hundreds of feet tall, dominating Shadesmar's landscape. People, spren, lived along the inside walls, walking up and down them, ignoring conventions of gravity. Looking down along one of the inside walls could be stomach churning unless you changed your perspective. Unless you convinced yourself that walking up and down that wall was normal. Whether a person was strong or not wasn't usually subject to debate. Yet if gravity could be a matter of opinion, she turned away from the heart of lasting integrity and walked along the very top of the wall, looking out to survey Shadesmar, rolling ocean of beads in one direction, jagged obsidian highlands lined with crystalline trees in the other. On the wall with her, an even more daunting sight, 2 spren with heads made of geometric lines, each wearing a robe of some too stiff, glossy black material. 2 spren. She'd bonded 2, one during her childhood, one as an adult. She'd hurt the first and suppressed the memory. Shallan knelt down before Testament, her original spren. The cryptic sat with her back to the stone railing. The lines and pattern that made up her head were crooked, like broken twigs. In the center, the lines were scratched and rough, as if someone had taken a knife to them. More telling, her pattern was almost frozen. Nearby, Pattern's head pulsed like a vibrant heart, always moving, always forming some new geometric display. Comparing the two broke Shallang's heart. She had done this to Testament by rejecting the bond after using her shard blade to kill her mother. Testament reached out with a long-fingered hand, and Shallan, pained, took it. It gripped hers lightly, but Shallan got the sense that it was all the strength Testament had. Testament responded to being a Deadeye differently from Maya, who stood nearby with Adolin and Collect. Maya had always seemed strong of body, even as a Deadeye. Spren broke in different ways, it appeared, just like people. Testament squeezed Shallan's hand again, bearing no expression but that torpid motion of lines. "Why?" Shallan asked. "Why don't you hate me?" Pattern rested his hand on Shallan's shoulder. "We both knew the danger, the sacrifice, and bonding to humans again. I hurt her. Yet, here you are," Pattern said, "able to stand tall, able to control the surges, able to protect the world." "She should hate me," Shallan whispered, "but there's no vitriol in the way she holds my hand, no judgment in the way she remains with us." "Because the sacrifice was worth something, Shallan," Pattern said, uncharacteristically reserved. "It worked. In the end, you recovered, did better. I am still here, and remarkably, I am not even a little bit dead." "I do not think you will kill me at all, Shallan. I am very happy about that." "Can I heal her?" Shallan asked. "Maybe if I bond her again?" "I think after talking to Collect," Pattern said, "I think you are still bonded to her." "But," Shallan looked over his shoulder at him, "I broke the bond. That did this." "Some breaks are messy," Pattern said. "A slice with a sharpened knife is clean. A slice with a dull one is ragged. Your break, done by a child without full intent, is like the one ragged. In some ways, that makes it worse. But it does mean there is still some connection between you two." So no," Pattern said. "I do not think merely saying words again would heal her." His head pattern spun a little more slowly, as if he were contemplating something profound. "These numbers are unfamiliar, Shallan. Strange, irrational, in a sequence I do not understand. I mean we are walking on unfamiliar ground. A better metaphor for you, yes. Unfamiliar ground. In the deep past, Deadeyes did not exist. It was what they'd learned, in part, from the Honor Spren and from Maya. The Deadeyes, all of them except Testament, had been bonded to ancient radiance before the Recreants. Together, they'd rejected their oaths, human and Spren alike. They'd thought it would cause a painful but survivable split. Instead, something had gone terribly wrong. The result had been the Deadeyes. The explanation might lie with Collect, the very person Shallan had been sent to Lasting Integrity to kill. She squeezed Testament's hand. "I'm going to help you," Shallan whispered, "whatever it takes." Testament didn't respond, but Shallan leaned in, wrapping her arms around the cryptic. Pattern's robe always felt hard, yet Testament's bent like cloth. "Thank you," Shallan said, "for coming to me when I was young. Thank you for protecting me. I still remember it. I still do not remember it all, but thank you." The cryptic slowly but deliberately put her arms around Shallan and squeezed back. "Rest now," Shallan said, wiping her eyes and standing up. "I'm going to figure this out." Shallan and Pattern left Testament to rest and crossed the wall at Lasting Integrity to meet with Adolin, Maya, and the Herald Collect, who were speaking with a kind of spren that Collect called a Sion. She manifests as a hovering ball of light, roughly the size of a head, with an odd symbol at the center. Other than them, the top of the wall top was empty this day. "You don't remember?" Pattern asked softly as he and Shallan walked. "The events with Testament? I thought you did. I thought with Vale gone." "Vale is not gone," Shallan said. "She's part of me, like she always was." I don't understand. It's hard to explain, Shalon said, and I'm not sure I've entirely figured it out. Healing is not an event pattern, but a process. I've incorporated Vale into myself, so she doesn't take control any longer, but she's not gone. Vale is me, but Vale is not always Shalon. But you are Shalon. Imagine it, she said, as Vale moving to the back of the wagon as we ride toward the future. She's still there, coaching me, and we're both aware of the world. There was more to it than that, of course. Shalon had projected some uncomfortable aspects of herself into Vale. Now she had to face them. She'd worried that Adolin would find it difficult, but, well, Adolin Kalin was storming wonderful. After the discussion last night, he seemed to understand. Together, they knew that there was work to do, but Shalon had taken an enormous step toward healing, and along with it, acknowledged something important. She didn't deserve hatred, but understanding. It was hard to believe, but Vale insisted they try anyway. But, Pattern said, Radiant is still separate? More separate, Shalon said. So still in the front of the wagon. Yes, that might change. It might not need to change. I'm figuring this out as I go, Pattern, but I do feel better. More importantly, I no longer need Vale to stand between me and the memories. So you do remember? Yes and no, Shalon said. It's a jumble. I was young, and the events were traumatic, and there is so much pain associated with memories of my mother. I need time to process. Humans are squishy. Not just bodies, minds too. Memories too. Ideas too. He seemed pleased by that. As a child, she'd bonded as friends, something her mother had not liked. A man had come, either to hurt Shalon or separate her from Testament. Her father had fought him, and during their struggle, Shalon's mother had come at her with a knife. In self-defense, Shalon had killed her mother with an early manifestation of Testament as a shard blade. Shalon, in trauma, had rejected her nascent oath and buried those memories. But if her bond with Testament had never been fully broken, what did that mean? And which memories of those days between her mother's death and the arrival of Pattern, which of those involved Testament? I knew I had a shard blade, long before I had bought in Pattern. I thought about it in Carbranth. She convinced herself that the weapon belonged to her father and had been kept in his safe. She'd gone there before leaving and drawn it out to dismiss it, pretending it was an ordinary blade, pretending she had 10 seconds to summon it. However, a part of her had known even then it was Testament, a friend to whom she'd done great harm. That was the one thing Shalon clearly remembered. Testament was her friend, a nippled pattern on the wall that had delighted, then engaged, then protected a young girl. Her friend had never been as talkative as Pattern. Indeed, Shalon could only remember rare, soft fragments of speech, encouraging her to stand against the darkness in her family. Shalon had loved her mysterious friend dearly. Though her memories were jumbled, the emotions shone through the pain. Strength could be a matter of perception sometimes, and today, Shalon found she could choose strength. They approached Adolin, Maya, and Kalek. Shalon still found it incredible that this man was one of the heralds of the Almighty. The short, balding fellow kept rubbing his hands together, as if washing them with an invisible soap and water. Adolin and Maya practically towered over him as they spoke to the ball of light. Maya was obviously paying attention. She wasn't completely healed. Her eyes were still scratched out, and her coloring wan brown instead of vibrant green like the others of her kind. But she was getting better. She no longer wandered off or just stared blankly during conversations. She was even starting to talk more here and there. I worry about what is to come, the ball of light was saying. It had transformed into an approximation of Wit's face, made all of soft white-blue light, and spoke with his voice. The Spren was a way to contact him, as they've discovered a few days ago. The war is about to intensify, and all rests upon the contest of champions, Odium's chosen warrior against whomever old Dalinar chooses. Father will choose himself, Adolin said. When the Blackthorn needs to be certain something is done right, he will do it himself. Adolin paused, then glanced at Maya. Storm him, he's probably our best chance, though. Wit, Shalon said. It's really happening? It is indeed. The contest is set, contracts agreed to. Shalon, they've set it for 10 days from now. So soon? Shalon asked. Storms. Where? Urithiru, Adolin said, arms folded. They've already sent windrunners to get us, apparently. Should arrive today. Shalon chewed on that, trying not to feel emotional whiplash. It had taken weeks to reach lasting integrity, but Windrudders could have them back to Earthera within the day, depending on how much stormlight they'd brought. She found herself eager to return. She'd had enough of the honor sprint and their elitism. She missed blue skies and plants that didn't crinkle when you touched them. Though Shadesmar had a sun, it was distant and cold. She could never thrive here. Plus, as she'd indicated to Testament, she had work to do. Wit, Shallan said, stepping closer. The glowing version of his face focused on her. My brothers are safe? You're certain? Very certain, brilliant one, he said back, soft. You're sure the Ghostbloods will move against you? Yes, she said. After a year and a half of flirting with the Ghostbloods, she'd finally stepped up and said no. Doing so, it essentially declared war on them. She found Adelin's hand for support. He knew the entire story now. Wit, I know their faces, their plans. I'm likely the greatest threat on the planet to their organization, and they've tried to kill Yasna for less. Everyone I love is in danger. I have to manage Dalinar and try to prepare him, Wit said, but I think I can help you as well. I've been watching Ray's little crew. I'll send your people my drawings of their members. But take care, Shallan. I know this group and their leader. They can be brutal. As can I, Shallan whispered. She glanced to Collect, who was staring out over the bead ocean, and the dead-eyed Spren who still stood on the shore. Despite him, she felt safe here with Pattern, Adolin, and Maya. Safe enough to voice it. Wit, I'm worried, though. Am I ready? I ask myself that same question now and then, he said. And Shallan, I'm 10,000 years old. During the trip, she said, I started to create a new persona, Wit. Formless. A version of me, but how did she explain it? A version of me with no face. A version of me who could do terrible things. I walked away from it, Wit, but that capacity is still inside of me. Shallan, he said, and she looked up, meeting his eyes. If it weren't for that capacity, then what good would choices be? If we never had the power to do terrible things, then what heroism would it be to resist? But did you turn it away? He asked, and Adolin squeezed her hand. Yes. Then heroism it is, Shallan. I'm remembering what I did to my mother, she said, and my father, and to a lesser extent Tin, and now Mraize. I'm going to have to kill him, Wit. Is that my destiny, to kill every person who has ever mentored me? And that, finally, her fears found voice. Did it sound silly, foolish, ridiculous? This pattern she'd seen in her life? Wit did not laugh, though, and he considered himself an expert on what was ridiculous. Would that any of us, he said, could protect ourselves from the costs of heroism. But again, if there were no cost, no sacrifice, then would it be heroism at all? I cannot promise you that it will be easy, Shallan, but I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, Radiant whispered. I'm proud of you. Vale, the part of her that was Vale, agreed. Thank you, she said. I have to go, Wit said, but I'll leave you with this. The Ghostbloods want something extremely valuable, and you have the key to it standing with you right now. If you want to destroy them, you might not need to kill every last one of them. Instead, you might just need a powerful leverage over them. The glowing sphere melded from his face back to a sphere. He's gone, the Spren said. I'm sorry. Wit's final words lingered with Shallan, reinforcing something she'd been considering. A way to protect Roshar from the Ghostbloods, and indeed, she knew what their next target was likely to be. They'd sent her to lasting integrity to get intel on one of the Unmade, and the Herald standing with her had the secrets they all wanted to know. I need, she said to Collect, to know everything you know about Ba Edo Mishram. The Herald wrung his hands and looked to the side as if seeking to escape. We're not going to hurt you, Adolin said calmly. You know that by now. I do, Collect said. It's just, I wasn't supposed to be involved. None of us are. I don't think the other Heralds follow that, Shallan noted, folding her arms. What did you do, Collect? Not much, he said, putting his hand to his head. I can't do much these days. I don't know why. I can't decide. He looked up at them, then formed fists, pulling them close up to his chest. I was at Earthero when the plan to capture Mishram was conceived. Then I joined them on their mission. I guess I'm the only one alive who actually knows what happened to her. That's why the Ghostbloods and their cursed Lord of Scars want me. Just tell us, Shallan said. Some of us learned you could capture Spren inside gemstones, he explained. And Mishram, for all her power, was a Spren. The Radiants prepared a flawless Heliodor, the color of sunlight, and they trapped her inside, and then they hid her prison, not in the physical realm and not in Shadesmar. He bit his lip between his teeth, then forced out another part. In the spiritual realm, Milishi hid it there. How? Shallan asked, sharing a look with Adolin. I don't know, Galek said, backing away. I promise you I don't know. But now they'll send more people for me, won't they? They'll trap me in a gemstone, or they think they'll be able to. He looked at the two of them, wide-eyed, and fled toward the way down. None of them gave chase. This was, unfortunately, usual behavior for Galek. Maya grunted softly, watching him go. He's gotten a lot worse, she said. Shallan started. You knew him? Met him a few times, Maya said, then took a deep breath. Never thought much of him, even then. Well, Shallan said, we know something more about Mishram, at least. Her prism is part of what Mraize has been hunting for a long time now, I suspect. Might need to find it first before he can do so. Ba Edo Mishram, Adolin said, thoughtful, leaning back against the wall's battlements. The most powerful of the unmade. What would the Ghostbloods want with her, though? Pattern said. Power. So much power. She was nearly a god. She bonded the singers once. Could Mraize be wanting to do something similar? Shallan shivered, considering and thinking of Mraize and his master Ayatul, somehow commanding the entirety of the enemy army. Was that possible? Whatever the reason, Shallan said, I have to stop him. Her prison is in the spiritual realm, though, Adolin said, frowning. What does that even mean? Pattern said. Means we will never be able to find it. Surely it's possible, Shallan said. If the ancient Radiants put it there, we should be able to take it out. You don't understand, Pattern said, holding hands apart and gesturing in his way. You think Shadesmar is odd, yes? Black sky, little sun, Pattern with arms and legs for perambulating? His head spun a little faster. The spiritual realm is stranger by orders of magnitude. It is a place where the future blends with the present, the past echoes like the striking of a clock. Time and distance stretch, like numbers, infinitely repeating. It is where gods live, and even baffles some of them. Shallan took that in, then glanced at Testament, huddled in the shadow of the wall further back along the walk. Our best guess, she said, is that the Deadeyes were created because Mishram was imprisoned, right? Agreed, Pattern said. Mishram became like a god to the singers, the Parshmen. She connected to Shar, and echoes of that filtered to the Spren. Ah, so wonderfully odd. Her imprisonment is the reason broken bonds now have such an effect on the Spren. It's because, Maya said, humans have no honor. The god, I heard that the Mishram had been captured. I heard that the Radiants would destroy the world. That is why I decided it was done. She shook her head. I don't know it all. I'd like to, considering what the breaking the bond did to me. That day, the day Mishram had been captured, something deeper had happened, an event connecting humankind, honor, Spren, and the bonds. We need to figure out how Mishram or a prison has power over bonds, Shallan said, looking to Pattern. We need to go into the spiritual realm and find that prison, however difficult it is. His Pattern slowed. Then finally, he laced his fingers together. Very well. Though you know what I said when I said I was sure you wouldn't get me killed? Yes. I should like, he declared, to make a retraction. And that is the first of the two chapters. I'm going to get you one more. So, scrolling past Kaladin, chatting with Wit as well. You can read that scene online. I think I read that at Dragonsteel last year. Yep. Nice little goofy conversation. Well, long, goofy conversation, considering how far I have to scroll. All right. Here we go. It was nice for Shallan to take a few hours to think for once. Sitting, wearing a bright blue hava rather than her traveling clothing, settled at the top row of the stone open-air forum within lasting integrity, drawing. How long had it been since she'd simply let herself draw? How long had it been since she'd sketched a little during her trip, but that felt like an eternity ago. She relaxed, flowing with the drawing, a depiction of the vertigo she felt looking up along the inside walls of lasting integrity. A surreal painting, like something from one of the older art movements, where perspective was intentionally alien and off-putting. She liked to think that the old surrealists had made contact with Spren and Shadesmar, warping their minds to new ways of seeing things. Though she'd never been quite as good with landscapes as she was with people, she was proud of the sense her sketch gave of falling, yet into what? You could not see, because the unnatural perspective held your eyes upward. Like others she'd done today, a strange face kept sneaking into the art. In this case, she'd absently warped the shadings of one wall into that face. Feminine, a singer with angular carapace and shadows and curves forming a strata-like design on her face. Shalon flipped through her sketchbook. Each drawing done today had that singer face hidden somewhere, and she didn't remember making them. She'd done something similar at Erethiru, where the presence of an unmade had warped her sketches. She tried not to let it disturb her quite so much this time. Then it had been a message. Was there a similar one now? She looked toward Adolin, who paced at the center of the forum, the place where just a few days before he'd been on trial. Today he'd been joined by Godeki, a lanky edge dancer. Shalon's agents had joined them as well, Ishna, Vatha, and Beryl, along with their cryptics. Together they waited for the Windrunners and for the fruits of some final efforts in lasting integrity. She started another sketch as they waited. In the end, 12 arrived. 12 honor spren from a population of hundreds. That was how many showed up in response to Adolin's call to arms. He and Godeki greeted each one with a smile, but she knew he'd expected more. One other did arrive, Nodam. The former sea captain still had his unique facial hair, though he walked on unsteady feet. They still didn't know why he'd been assaulted by those Tukari that Adolin had saved him from. Nodam didn't join Godeki and Adolin, but instead walked down the steps to join Shalon. Radiant Kulin, he said. That was still odd to hear, even a year after the wedding. It hadn't been assumed that she would take Adolin's name. Among the Alethi Lightais, either party was equally likely to take their name or keep their name as adopt a new one. In her case, she was needed in the Kolin line of succession. She doubted she'd take a throne that Adolin had turned down, but Dalinar wanted people he trusted in line. Her adoption into the Kolin house would strengthen their claim, should it come to that. In explaining this to her, Dalinar and Navani had been speaking pragmatically, but Shalon knew she remembered that day differently. For her, it was the day when a set of parents had, for the first time, wanted her. Nodam settled down beside her. Your mission was a success. 12 new Radiants. We expected more, though, Radiant said, emerging. After the support Adolin got at the trial, I anticipated an excellent recruitment effort. A good number of the honor friends support him, Nodam said, but that doesn't mean they want to be bonded. One can be irate at the honor spend leadership and think humans are deserving of support without wanting to take that step. Down below, the 12 honor spren started to fade. I've never seen this before, Nodam added. I thought they'd go in a blink. Instead, they fade away to nothing. Not nothing, Radiant said. They'll appear on the other side. I hear it's traumatic, Nodam said. He had a stiff, formal way of speaking, even when the words were casual, clipping each word as if he were making an announcement from the quarterdeck of a ship. Spren on the other side forget themselves. Only briefly, Radiant said. These will probably stay in a group, which helps, and immediately make their way to Erethiru, drawn by the squires training them. Do you even need them now, though? Nodam asked. Isn't the war soon to end? Windrunners are our primary method of traveling long distances, and I suspect they'll be helpful in peacetime. Beyond that, even if Dalinar wins the contest, I worry about what is to come next. I think the more Radiants we have, the more stable our position will be. Then I should hurry, Nodam said, standing, to join them so that I'm not left alone. Radiant approved, but Shalon, she noticed something. You sound reluctant, Shalon said. He looked at her, glowing the same soft blue that of all the honor spren. His uniform, his hair, everything about him was made of the same soft light. Solid, not transparent, but also not quite real in the way she understood reality. There is nothing more for me here, Nodam said. I've been rejected of mine, and seen their pettiness. I should like to be of service. Though, I admit, I do not wish to bond a human. I loathe the idea. Is that petty of me, in turn? Absolutely not, Shalon said. I have 2 bonds, Nodam, and understand the cost better than most. It's not pettiness or even cowardness to be hesitant. It's just like it's not cowardly or petty to reject any relationship. Pardon, Nodam said, but other sorts of relationships don't lead to soldiers with remarkable powers. That did admittedly complicate the matter, But after learning what she'd done to Testament, who sat with Pattern a few rows down, Shallan couldn't help but question their mission itself. They needed windrunners, yes, but it made her increasingly uncomfortable to demand that a Spren bond. It wasn't intimate in the traditional human sense of the word, but it's felt as deeply personal. We can use every windrunner, yes, she said, but I don't think you should force yourself to bond a human if that makes you uncomfortable. You can be a good person and say no, Nodam. I've learned that. Perhaps, Nodam said. Perhaps I will stay a little longer here, then. With effort, I might persuade others of my kind to offer you support. He pointed and drew her attention to a group of honor spren walking past, wearing traveling clothing and carrying gear. As if to leave on a long hike, they waved to Shallan and Adolin, but did not join those fading away. Objectors? Shallan asked as Adolin waved back to them. Those you mentioned earlier? Yes. They don't agree with how you were treated, but also don't want to go to war. They leave lasting integrity to make their own way. She nodded. Well, Radiant Godeki is staying to continue to normalize relations with the Honor Spren, and I might leave one of my agents as well. If you stay, that would help. They could use a solid ally here. I am your ally, he said, but as I warned you, the Honor Spren leadership does not care for me, even if they have been forced to revoke my exile. His expression grew distant. We have an entire navy that once sailed the Bead Ocean. It is a shame to see those boats abandoned in the shipyards. It gives the enemy full control of Shadesmar seas. Perhaps I could sail under Honor Spren authority again. Storms. If Shallan hadn't said anything, Nodam might have actually gone to become a Radiant Spren, meaning she'd just actively gone against their orders in coming here. Perhaps she wouldn't mention that part in her report to Dalinar. No other Spren came. Lucindia, the Spren who had been Shallan's guide since her arrival at Lasting Integrity, made no appearance. Shallan had hoped she would change her mind despite their occasional clashes. Nodam, Shallan said, thank you for how you stood up for us during the trial. I am one person stretched thin, Radiant Kholin, he said, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, like colors on the mast which have waved too long in the wind. I don't know what I believe or trust any longer, but what was done to you was not right. I could not play the sham role they demanded of me. I ask your forgiveness for even considering it. It was natural to want your own life back, Nodam. He turned to her, blue eyes meeting hers. I lay on the ground, battered and assaulted, and watched your husband rise in my defense against overwhelming odds. He saved me with no expectation of reward. In that moment, I knew that honor lived. He nodded curtly to Shallan, then walked down the steps to talk with Adolin. Shallan slowly turned back to her sketch, where she soon found that she'd drawn yet another face, an Adolin's shadow. Storms. Don't be unnerved, she thought. You were upset when you drew Pattern for the first time back in Kharbranth, but look how that turned out. She would not be afraid of her own art. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to flip to the next sheet and start drawing again, till someone else settled down beside her. Collect leaned forward, hands clasped, singing small and fragile. I'm not going with you, he said softly. I can't. It's not safe for you here, Shallan said, sketching, fingers moving as if of their own accord. If I got to you, Mraze's other assassins can do so. I will hide. Better. But I can't leave the Sion, and she can't travel right now. It wouldn't be good for her. Shallan didn't argue. It never seemed to work with Collect. Instead, she lost herself in a sketch of him, a herald to add to her collection. She might have said this was the rarest of gems to obtain, but was a herald equally rare, actually rarer than anyone else? One might say, because of their immortality, they were less so. We are broken, Shallan, Collect finally said. We are not the heroes you wish us to be, not anymore. I know how that feels. I don't think you do, he said, wrapping his arms around himself. I don't believe anyone does. He looked at Adolin, chatting with Nodam and Godeki. You're really going to try to find Mishram? If I don't, Shallan said, my enemies will. Then what? He said. Will you release her? I cannot decide, always cannot decide. I have preached for her freedom in the past, but now I worry. She might join in strength and odium. She hates humans. He put his hand to his head. Shar says all the unmade should be contained, yet what we did to the singers by imprisoning her... I'll worry about that when we find her gemstone, Shallan said. Honestly, I'll probably bring it back to the bondsmiths and let everyone decide together. He didn't decide to respond, so she continued drawing. This familiar sound of charcoal pencil on paper, the distilled attention of creation, like the most potent of alcohol. She attracted a few creation spren, like little swirling lights. These ones, though, behaved oddly. And here, she'd never seen them change shape like they did in the physical realm, but these started adopting the look of her pencil and eraser. She kept drawing, lines imitating life, freeing it, but altering it at the same time. You could never make an exact copy. That wasn't the point. Every sketch was a picture of the artist as well, their perspective, their emphasis, their instinct, reclaiming a moment otherwise lost. Once she got to the end, it was sublime. That moment when you basked in the thing you'd created, the feeling of awe mixed with disbelief that this beautiful object had come from you, accompanied by the slightest worry that, because if you didn't understand how you did it, you maybe didn't deserve to have been part of that creation. She loved the feeling, even the uncertainty of it. Radiant, Colette said, hands clasped as he stared down at the stone floor of the amphitheater. What do you fear? What kind of question was that? I don't know, she lied. I fear options, he said. I see every choice I make, and I see the terrible results that could stem from them. If I stay here, I see you fail without me. If I go, I see my presence, broken as I am, cause your failure. I cannot continue. I do not. She rested her hand on his, then handed him the sketch. He took the picture, frowning. Then his eyes widened as he saw it depicting him standing tall, wearing robes and striding from a fanciful city with colorful walls and strange trees with long fronds she'd made up. He carried a staff with an odd shape at the top and strode toward the glowing light on the horizon. Though in the picture, he looked backward and his face was determined, decisive. Do you often do this? He asked. Sketch people? She said, then blushed. Yes, I kind of do it all the time, when I'm feeling like myself at least. Not simply sketching, child. Do you often draw upon fortune, glimpse someone's possible selves, then pull one forth, touch in some way what could have been, what might still be? He glanced at her and must have seen the utter confusion in her eyes as he sighed. Is this a skill commonly employed by light weavers during your time? Not that I know of, she said, but I don't exactly understand what you're saying. He glanced toward Pattern and Testament. To Spren. Of course, you've bonded too. Strange things happen when a Nile bond is imbricated. There were rules against it once, I believe. How long have you had them both? For some time, she said. Though I didn't know it, I didn't remember it until just recently. And how often, he asked, holding up the sheet, do you glimpse into the spiritual realm, then manifest it in your art? She thought back to pictures she'd done, like one found in the pocket of a dead man, like sketches of the unmade lurking Erythero, or faces turning up in her art without her intending to draw them. She began to feel like a fool for objecting so quickly to someone who obviously knew far more about these things than she did. It might happen now and then, she said. There was an unmade Erythero, and it showed up in my art. Now these faces. She turned one toward him. He nodded. Because you've been thinking about traveling to the spiritual realm and finding Ba-Adom Mishram. That's her. One interpretation of her, yes, he said. If you were someone else, I would assume you had seen some ancient art and were unconsciously influenced by it. For you, he shrugged, fortune can do unthought, fantotic things. I'm sorry, fantotic? It means unnerving, he said. I'm sorry. I don't keep up on shifts in language, nor am an expert on fortune. Best speak to Midias, your wit, about that. And fantotic man himself, that one. I will stop there. It's not the end of the chapter, but we're about out of time.